it was going to be a online guide to Paris. So the idea was throw out your, big, thick, heavy fromers or folders guide, and because you don't want to look like a tourist when you're walking down the streets of Paris, and you could have your phone and you could have, what I think were the best restaurants and hotels and all these places that I'd visited and so forth. So it was going to be an online guide to Paris. And it was. And now it's 15 years later. It really helped me, interestingly, COVID, which is the last thing you'd think. Obviously, it was terrible for the travel business, but it allowed us to kind of regroup and figure out, how can we get ready for what we think will be an onslaught of people wanting to travel. And now we're doing over 60 tours a year to 40 different countries. So,
welcome to the Winging It Travel Podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I am joined by Doni Belau. Doni founded the women-only tour company Girls Guide to the World in 2009 with a mission to empower women of all ages to explore the world. Girls Guide to the World now offers 60 tours to 40 countries. As an intrepid traveller who has explored to over 80 countries, Doni has used her destination knowledge to curate a diverse portfolio of trips catering to a wide range of interests, from cultural immersion and culinary tours to active adventures and wellness retreats. Doni's diverse experiences, from television production to humanitarian work in South Africa, has fueled her passion for creating transformative journeys that blend personal growth with the joy of exploration. With over 15 years of experience in the travel industry, Doni's in-depth understanding of destinations, travel trends, and evolving consumer desires ensures that each tour offered prioritizes connection, personal growth, and unforgettable experiences. When not leading trips, she divides her time between France, New Orleans, and a sailboat named Reddish, a testament to her adventurous spirit. This is pre-recorded, so let's get stuck into the episode. You won't regret it. This is a heck of a chat. Let's go. Doni, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great, and I'm just so thrilled to join you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure. Can you tell the listeners where you are right now?
I am. I'm actually in New Bedford, Massachusetts. We live on our sailboat in the summer, so our sailboat is named Relish, and so we have a 360-degree view of the water.
Fantastic. Yeah, Massachusetts was on my road trip last year, and we loved it.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, there's so much here.
There's a couple of things, right? There's a lot of water there, which obviously is where you are, right? But the access to Boston and then ultimately further down to New York makes it a great place to hang out.
Oh my gosh. And there's so much history here,
Yes.
It's a fabulous place. And Cape Cod, of course, Martha's Vineyard belongs to Massachusetts, and that's a gorgeous, gorgeous island. I highly recommend going there. So there's so much. I mean, the Northeast, we're very spoiled up here with so much to see and do.
Yeah, we stayed in Salem, if you know that.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a campsite right on the cusp of the water. It's like basically a concrete car park space, basically. But it's a campsite and also a couple of beaches. So we just camped there, checked out Salem, and then walked down to the train station, got the train to Boston a few times. So, yeah, it's a great time.
Did you take one of the witch tours? I actually thought they were really depressing.
Well, we walked around town just reading the stuff, and it was a bit depressing. Yeah, it's not the most uplifting of stories, right?
Yeah, no, it's just actually really horrible, especially as a woman. And, oh boy, I don't know, you kind of, they try and make it sort of, one of the tourist attractions. And of course, I guess if I would have been a little bit more on the ball, I would have realized, of course, it's a depressing story. But it's very upsetting. So keep that in mind, people, if you're going to Salem.
Yeah, if you take that stuff away from Salem, I actually quite like the place. It's actually an all right place to hang out, isn't it? It's not just about I guess a lot of it is dominated by the witches and all that sort of stuff. But as a place, quite a cool place to hang out and have a base as well, in terms of if you're going to see some cities or do some water activities. I think it's quite cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's just tons of gorgeous places and seaside towns in Massachusetts as well as Rhode Island. That's where we keep our boat in Connecticut, in Stonington. So that's right next to Rhode Island. So yeah, there's a wealth of wonderful seaside towns all up and down the coast.
Yeah, and before we get stuck into the main conversation, we parked up in Darien in Connecticut and then got the
Oh,
train into New York City. That was our little base.
sure.
Yeah.
Very cute, very historic town, very preppy as well.
What does that mean?
Lots of white, a lot of preppy. A lot of waspy people.
Right, okay. I think in
Yeah,
the UK that means like private school, sort of posh people.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
exactly. Yeah. Not a lot of diversity is what I should say.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And let's go back to some early childhood memories of travel. I'd like to know, was it part of your life growing up? And was there any trips that kind of ignited the wanderlust or the ambition to travel?
I definitely have to thank my parents for instilling that desire to travel in me. But I am from Nebraska. So as a Brit, you may not know, just like I don't know where Norwich is. It's the middle of nowhere in the middle of the Midwest, as Midwest as you can possibly get. And back in the 70s, when I was growing up, the only way anybody got anywhere, at least in Nebraska, of middle class rearing would be to drive. So you drove everywhere. I was not on a plane until I was like 7 or 8 years old. And that was pretty crazy to be like someone who ever had gone on a plane because it was really expensive plane travel back then. Um, so we would drive, to Maine. Think about that's a long drive. We
Oh,
drive to
wow.
California. We even drove down to Guadalajara, Mexico. So yeah, spending that much time in the car is not very fun, in my opinion. So I'm quite happy that things are changed these days. But definitely, my parents were really interested in exploring other states, other cultures, nature, everything. So they definitely instilled that in me for sure.
Okay. And was there anything in those trips that maybe got you thinking like in the future, this might be something I want to do? I don't know, as a career is a bit strong, but like just as something you'd like to do often, as you go into adulthood.
Well, I don't know that I really became as passionate about it as I am now until I took a trip with my sister, who is quite a bit older than me. And both my sisters are. It was kind of an accident. And we for my high school graduation, she was nice enough to take me all over Europe. We actually held a tag sale to like come up with extra money. It was pretty hilarious, but we went, to Paris, London, Florence, Rome, Belgium, and it was a huge eye opener. I'm 17 at the time. Nobody in my family had ever been out of the country except for my sister one other time. So it was I think then that I realized basically the aha thing was, wow, there's so many different ways to live your life. And when you have that sort of small tunnel vision of somebody who's grown up and, and hasn't really, gone too many places, taking a trip overseas is just, a shock to the system in the most exciting possible way. So it was from then on that I developed, and maybe a little bit later for a second trip, where I developed this passion in particular for Paris. And, everything kind of flowed after that. So, but I never thought I would do that for a living until much later after two complete careers.
I think we had the same thinking, as in me and my sister, maybe more me. Even though in terms of distance, Norwich is very close to Paris. It's like a 45-minute flight, maybe an hour tops.
Yeah.
Whereas Nebraska is in the middle of nowhere. What I noticed about the road trip last year is the distance in Camden, US is huge. It's hard to convey being from Europe because it's the size of Europe, each of those countries, right? In terms of going west
Yeah.
to east or east to west. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was the same sort of thinking, right? Like, oh yeah, wow, like something could happen in a different way. It could be France, could be Thailand, whatever it is. But did you suffer from culture shock, do you think?
No, I loved it. I never had to suffer from. I was always excited, and I do again credit my parents because it was all about discovery in our family. Just curiosity, discovery, and then what I learned later is never to compare a place. So people will say, "Well, do you like Paris or London better?" It's not fair. It's like saying apples and oranges. Well, I mean, oranges are great in vodka, shall we say. They're also amazing in a cake. It is late at night, so I'm thinking of cocktails. And I did write a cocktail book, so there you go. But
There you go.
apples are fantastic with peanut butter. So it's like trying to compare your kids. It just so that's something I learned the more I traveled. But I've never really experienced. I don't think culture shock. What I do find, especially when I spend a lot of time in Paris, and then my second favorite place is, or anywhere in France. We have a house near Bordeaux. Or if I spend a lot of time, I just was in Japan for 3 weeks, and I just love. And that was last year. I just love Japan. And when you come
Hmm.
back, States, I have a reverse culture shock more often
Oh yeah, I
because
hear that a lot.
certain things that I love about those particular places. Think about the markets. Like it really kind of depresses me when I come back and have to go to a regular grocery store in the U.S. compared to, a Parisian or a market near our house in Bordeaux. It's so, you know, just so amazing. And the same with Japan, but in a different capacity. That just the politeness there.
Mm.
We had a friends who lived there for a couple of years, and they came back, and we took this guy to a Yankees game, and everybody's screaming and yelling, which is part of the fun of baseball in the U.S. But he was just having such culture shock because it's so not the Japanese way, and just everything is so polite and so kind and so thoughtful. So, I think I have reverse culture shock more.
Yeah, Japan's an interesting one because they love baseball, for example. Like this, I think it's their biggest sport. I think
Yeah.
outside of sumo wrestling, I think. But
Yeah.
it's a completely different environment and different way of watching the game, right? Like you said, like he was probably shocked, even though it's the same game and the same
Yeah.
rules. Everyone
Yeah.
knows the rules, but it's just the way it's perceived in the crowd, right? But also, the biggest thing for Japan, for me, for reverse culture shock, is the transport system. When I
Yeah.
get back to North America, I think, how on earth has Canada and US just not built a high speed rail? What is going on there? Imagine you can just get
I
to
know.
LA to New York in like, I don't know how many hours it take in terms of distance and time, but they travel at 500 kilometers an hour. Like, imagine that. I don't
And they're
understand.
always on time.
Time. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Always on time. And I think you get a rebate if they're like remotely late. So I think it's just an amazing country. Yeah. Japan's
It is.
awesome.
I
Yeah.
love it.
And I want to ask, when you sort of came through childhood and you're going into adulthood, I guess if travel wasn't there then, I imagine that the career aspect comes into it. So what were you doing or looking to do for career?
Well, it's a long story, James, and it might be, I don't want to bore people too much, but I was going to be an actress. I went to
Yeah.
UCLA, and I was, like every other girl and probably every other guy in Los Angeles. That lasted a couple of years until I realized that there was a lot of, waitressing and starvation involved in being an actress. So I moved to New York and went into the film business, but behind the scenes. So I ended up, worked my way up to being a producer in the film business. So I was the typical 20 something who saves up and goes on trips whenever she can or he can. So, but I've always, where I was always interested in going somewhere and a new place. I definitely am always looking for the new. Even though I totally committed and love France in every possible way, but always someplace new. And we got married pretty young and traveled all the time, including bringing my son when he was, 5 months old. His first Christmas was in France. My sister ended up buying a house there. So there was travel throughout, but my first career was the film business. Took some time off and raised the kids I was home for about 8 years. And then I got into the political arena and not-for-profit work. And that is not a business where you can travel at all, because of course it's
No.
all focused here.
Yeah.
But, anytime I had off, also traveling. At that time, we bought a place in Paris. So I was always trying to get back to Paris all the time. So I think it's been my life quest to live there. Now we've had a place there for 25 years. So I'm super grateful for that. Have never stayed more than 3 months at a time. So just recently got our long stay visa. We're actually working on it. So hopefully this coming year, we're going to be able to stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, that was my next question. Are you a citizen or at least a resident?
No, I am not a citizen of France, nor is that something that we want to do because it gets into some tricky tax issues. So so we are definitely U.S. citizens. We have had a place there for a long time. You do not need to be a citizen in any way, shape, or form to own property there. And contrary to at least our house when we used to live in New York, the property taxes are really low, which people always complain about taxes in Europe, but actually we just in terms of property taxes, very very affordable.
I think France gets an interesting reputation in Europe because they do have workers' rights and rights for the citizens that are probably a bit better than most countries. Now, It's obviously going to be a bit controversial because it depends what side of the spectrum you're going to be on. But France, for me, is it's not paradise, but it's set working hours. Their taxes, in terms of property tax, is quite low. Not sure on the income tax, but they're very strict on time off. Like you need to take your vacation. They get 5-6 weeks a year. I think August is kind of notoriously known as a time where they all shut off and go on their summer holidays, even though it's Olympics right now. As a country, I can imagine it's quite a cool place to live. And my biggest regret is that because the UK left the EU, I didn't get a chance to live in France when we had the chance. So that's a bit of a regret.
I know. So our house is that we've had since 2009 is near Bordeaux. It's near Saint-Emilion, and that is the Aquitaine. So as you know, the English ruled that area of France for 400 years. And I'm convinced that's why I have so many English neighbors, because you guys have not, you still think you own it.
Okay.
No, I'm joking, obviously. But it's wonderful because we have so many English neighbors, and it's great. We actually have the guy who takes care of our house is English. And so it's just really wonderful. It's a really great mix of French and English and lots of other people from a lot of other countries too. So it's a really very vibrant area. And as you know, or I don't know if you do know, but they've developed a really fast train now. So you can get from Bordeaux to Paris in 2 hours and 15 minutes. So Bordeaux is really hot right now. And all the prices have gone up in terms of property, but we like it just because we love Paris and we have a little flat there that we rent. But we love Bordeaux because it's so sunny and warm there. You got a lot more sun there than you do up north.
Yeah, I think there's 3 love affairs in the UK growing up with countries, and France is one of them because you always watch TV shows and it's people moving to the south of France. We just have that idyllic French countryside by near the coast, but down the south. I think US is one because it's seen as the big, grand US and opportunity, I suppose. And the third one I'd arguably say is Australia because we can get there quite easily and it's the other side of the world. And I think we have a similar culture, right? So I think, what's it like down there? I think those 3 countries probably come into the basics of most people in the UK, whether you're into travel or not. But
absolutely.
France is obviously a dream of many.
Yeah. We're not alone in this love of France, but I just went to Australia for the first time last year. And I was bowled over. I was on one of our trips, but I was bowled over by Sydney. And that is one of the most gorgeous cities in the world. And just, wow. It's kind of the food, the people, the architecture, the sea, it's almost just picture perfect.
Yeah, that location, the harbour, is unrivaled.
It is. Absolutely.
Can't think of too many places like that. Yeah. Australia's a favourite, I must admit.
Yeah.
Before we get stuck into Girls' Guide to the World, a couple more questions. Can you speak French?
Absolument, mais pas parfait. Not perfect. But I can get by. I have a decent accent, but sometimes my verbs sound like, I'm 4 years old. So if I revert to, present tense all the time or something. But I can get by. I can get most of my things done. But if I'm at a dinner party with like 6 people, and after like the second glass of wine, everybody starts talking really fast, and by the time I know what I'm going to say, they've moved on to the next topic. So I have decided I've got to live there for 6 straight months, take classes, just have somebody come in or go somewhere for 45 minutes, an hour a day, and it will then hopefully get to the next level. But it's decent, and I speak some Spanish too. So.
Oh, that helps. Okay. Yeah. And on your bio, you mentioned that you're obsessed with food. So French food, is that a favorite of yours?
Absolutely, of course. I always say you could argue about which country has the best food, and of course, it's a ridiculous argument to have, but it's a fun topic. And some people would say France. Some people say Italy. I might say Japan. I love Japanese food. It's probably my favorite. But you cannot argue that anyone makes better pastry than the French. I mean, they really do desserts better than anyone else. I would stake a claim on that. But I will try anything. I'm just very, very open. I like, being from Nebraska, I like, the cheese whiz and, pigs in a blanket all the way to foie gras and caviar. So everything in between. I'm just, somebody who I just love food. That's a big part of our tours, to make sure we're staying in, really nice and interesting boutique hotels, but, making sure that you really discover the culture through the food. If that's maybe a cooking class, market visit, a Michelin star meal, and some street food. So, and everything in between. And so, I think it's one of the most, the few countries that I've been where I didn't like the food, it's like, that's a big drag for me.
I don't see a better way of getting your morning started than just wandering through Paris in a random street and just picking a random cafe and getting a croissant or a baguette and a coffee. I can't see anything better, maybe apart from an English breakfast, but that's obviously personal. In terms of traveling, I just can't see anything better.
No, absolutely. I mean, what could be better? What a great way to start your day. And especially, I love the fact that the French and a lot of other people actually in other countries, and we don't do it here in the States, but they will sit outside almost no matter what the weather. There's little heaters out there. They'll put up some plastic tent-like things, and they're out there. And part of that is because some of the smokers are allowed to smoke on the terrace, but people love to be outside at the cafes. And, it is a little bit of a cliche, but it's marvelous too.
Yeah, and what I love about Paris, France, and I'm going to chuck Italy in there as well, even Spain, is that the cost doesn't go up. So in Canada, we can go to a trendy cafe here and it's $5 for a coffee. I'm like, that's scandalous. You walk in the middle of Paris or Rome or any big city in these like Mediterranean countries, if you like, or even Greece is another classic example. They're just still €1.50. And that's unbelievable.
Yep.
And that's totally the way it should be.
I think there's a sense that in Europe in particular, but in other countries as well, I see this in Japan too, that it's a right to be able to eat well. I mean, we have a place that we love that near our house in the Bordeaux region where it's really a truck driver's stop. It's a truck stop. And, you know what truck stops are like in the U.S. You did some traveling.
Yeah, stayed in some.
Yeah, and it's not really where you're going to find your best food, right? But For 13 euros, you can get a 3-course meal with coffee, dessert, wine, and it's going to be good. It's going to be homemade, and it's it's considered a normal. Like everybody should be eating well. We don't have to just because we're on the road. We don't have to go right to chicken fingers and fish sticks and this horrible, disgusting food that we all
Yeah.
feel like we have to eat on the road because there's nothing else. I just think it shouldn't be that in order to eat good, decent, real food, we have to pay $18 for a breakfast, a nice breakfast sandwich or something. It's getting crazy,
Yeah. Out of control.
Yeah.
Crikey. To move on to an amazing part of this podcast episode, and for you as well, you created the women-only tour company Girls Guide to the World in 2009. So I guess the mission here is to empower female and women travel. Tell us what got you started with the thinking of setting it up. Like, where did that come from? Was there a moment? Like, how did it get started?
Well, I'd like to tell you that it was all this grand plan, and I wrote a business plan, and I did all this market research, and that is not at all the truth. Basically, I was in the saving the world business, politics and not-for-profit, which was very rewarding, but I was getting really burnt out. And had coffee with a friend one day who was in book publishing, and I said, I just really want to do something I'm passionate about that's a little bit more fun, that I just, gosh, as you know, I love Paris, I'm telling her. And, it would be really cool, I think, to write a book about my version of Paris. So I think that each of us has a lens by which we see, particularly these big iconic cities. So you probably have your version of Vancouver, and I have my own version of New York. And if I were to bring you to New York, I'd show you a certain type of New York. Another person's going to show you something else. So this was my idea. And she said, why don't you call it, because she had been with me on a girls' trip, just, a bunch of girlfriends staying at our apartment. She said, why don't you call it the Girls' Guide to Paris? Because, the whole chick lit thing is not going away. And she, and I said, oh, what a great name. I love that name. And talked to another friend who was in publishing, and he said that nobody's going to publish a book by you. You don't have any authority on the subject of Paris, nowadays. And he's an agent. He said, you have to have a big, huge following, and you need to be able to get on the Today Show by yourself before anyone's going to, publish a book. So I was like, oh, gosh, well, this is 2009 or actually 2008 when I'm thinking about this. And I said, well, I'll just create a website. How hard could that be? So this is before Wix and Foursquare and all the, easy. So we were like coding this thing, and obviously I didn't know how to code. So I'm hiring a guy. It was a major learning curve, and I had no idea what I was going to do in terms of monetization of this thing. It was going to be an online guide to Paris. So the idea was throw out your, big, thick, heavy Frommer's or Fodor's guide, and because you don't want to look like a tourist when you're walking down the streets of Paris, and you could have your phone, and you could have, what I think are the best restaurants and hotels and all these places that I'd visited and so forth. So it was going to be an online guide to Paris, and it was. It was like childbirth, launching that website. Very difficult. It happened. Spent a good year and a half trying to figure out how I was going to make money instead of just spend money on the thing. We got up to 1 million readers, and I was not making money. So I said, this is a year, not monthly, but I said, well, something's got to change here. So I was really throwing spaghetti at the wall. And by 2011, I did my first tour. And that was to Paris, actually, with a life coach. So it was kind of this retreat / discovery tour. It was really, went really well, but I was exhausted. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not for me. This is so hard. And just like anything, when you're learning something new, it's really difficult because you're kind of trying too hard and, all of those things. So I did my next tour probably a year later. So slowly, it got easier and we expanded. We just originally just did France, and then we expanded to the UK, and then we did Bali, and just, it was like 2 tours a year, and then 4, and then 10, and then slowly, and now it's 15 years later. And it really helped me, interestingly, COVID, which is the last thing you'd think. Obviously, it was terrible for the travel business, but it allowed us to kind of regroup and figure out, how can we get ready for what we think will be an onslaught of people wanting to travel? Let's develop some partnerships. Let's redo the website, did all this work. And at that same time, my husband, who's been in tech his whole life, decided he was sick and tired of what he was doing, and he joined me. He really helped me build the business, and now we're doing over 60 tours a year to 40 different countries. So, yeah.
Wow, that is incredible. And it's interesting you said about the COVID thing, right? 2 points in the COVID thing. This made me start the podcast, and COVID made me start it because we couldn't travel, right? So what's the next best thing? We can talk about it. So that's like why it started, and it's still going.
See, there you go.
This kind of ties in. The second point is doubling down during COVID. Someone else, I think 2 guests have said it recently, that during COVID they thought, well, people aren't traveling, so what do you do next? Well, you double down, you upgrade, you probably get better skills, you do more blogs, you do more better website maintenance, whatever it is, because there will be a comeback eventually. And I think now we're seeing this post-COVID comeback last year going to this year especially.
Yeah.
And I love that because there's a bit of foresight there. There's not like a down in the dumps sort of like, what we're going to do. It's more like, now proactive, let's get out there and be ready for when people start going to Paris, right?
Well, don't get me wrong. I had definitely some sleepless nights, and just,
of course,
I was just praying that we'd make it through. And I had one really down day. And I will tell you, the thing that turned me around, this is the funniest thing, is I came home and I had listened to some podcast. It wasn't actually a podcast. Oh yeah, it was a podcast. It was the Daily, the New York Times.
Yep.
And it's that guy who, this is probably like 2 months in, who predicted how long this was going to last. Because in my mind, this is 3 months max. How could this possibly last longer? Because I'm such an optimist. And he really laid it out as to how long it was going to last. He was totally correct. And I was very depressed. And we came home. We were staying at a friend's house up in they had an empty house up by the beach in Rhode Island. And we watched the movie Fabulous Fungi. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's one of the greatest documentaries. And I think a lot of people, we got into a lot of different things, like you said, during COVID that maybe we never would have had time to, but I just got obsessed with mushrooms and how amazing they are. So you never know where a salvation's going to come.
I totally agree. Yeah. I guess it's kind of sink or swim, isn't it? I suppose in those times, if you're trying to do something like a bit more creatively or outside of the generic employee 9-to-5 mindset situation, right? If you're trying to be out there, it's quite a difficult time. But I reckon some people loved it, and it is a time to reset and kind of get some creative projects on the go, right? And then maybe they're still going today, and it's because of COVID.
Well, I definitely think it allowed people the time to rethink things. What's important? Do I need to be doing things this way? We got to spend a whole bunch of time with my daughter and her then boyfriend, now husband, which was amazing. We actually traveled a lot during COVID, which sounds really crazy, but because we knew that all of a sudden we were going down to no income from, having a business, my husband had the foresight to rent out our house because we had a house then up in just north of New York City. And as you know, New York City was the epicenter. So we rented out the house, which gave us, people were paying crazy, crazy amounts of money for anything that wasn't in the city, that was in the country. So that kind of got us through. And so we were super lucky. And we would just kind of find places that would take us, or we'd rent Airbnb and sort of isolate there. And one of them was Oaxaca, Mexico. So it was
lovely.
A great place to be. Have you been there?
No, but I'm going in November. So I need some tips.
Oh, wonderful. Are you going to go for Day of the Dead?
Actually, no, this will be the start of December, actually, the first week. It's the end of my trip.
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
going for a month,
Oh,
but
well,
I'm going to finish in Oaxaca and Mexico City. Yeah.
oh, it's just a marvelous, marvelous place. We got to live there for 2 months and we fell in love with
Wow.
it so much. My son came down and my daughter just got married there in March. So
Oh,
we
wow. Okay.
just love it. It's the food capital, back to food, but it's the food capital of France. It's the land of seven moles, beautiful colonial architecture, amazing indigenous history. It's definitely my favorite place in Mexico. And we do 2 different trips there because I love it so much.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, 3 weeks leading up to that is I'm overlanding from El Salvador, right? So it's a bit more on the go, lots of stuff going on through Guatemala as well. But Oaxaca and Mexico City are going to be more of just a chill out, living in the city type vibe. I want to just be in Oaxaca and spend time in the city and see as much as I can, but not at a too busy a pace. I want to just chill out for a bit.
Yeah.
Decide on the day what tours to do, where to go, markets, tours, foods, whatever it is. So I'm really looking forward to it, actually. I can't wait.
Well, you're going to email me because I have 1,000 tips. Too many. You won't be
Yes,
able to
please.
do all of them. I've got some great insider stuff because we spent a lot of time there. I love it.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. I'll send you an email after this call. Okay.
You bet.
The thing I want to ask you about the Girls Guide is you spent, I guess, 25 years, right, of the traveling in France, Paris, etc. What did you learn about traveling in smaller groups and maybe women only that made you also think about providing this for people? Because there must have been something that's really good about it, because you must have loved it to then create a business years later that does that exact same thing.
I think all of us ladies, women, probably all the women in your life, you must know, love girls' night out. It's very popular, right? So girls' night out. Look, guys like that too. But
Sure.
it's a time that we can share and laugh and bond. And I think that the bonding process for women is of paramount importance. It's just sort of our lifeblood. And, I was always that person in the friend group who was bringing everybody together and making plans to do things together and doing creative things, or, going places, even whether it's going out to dinner or going on a weekend trip or going somewhere like Marfa, Texas or whatever. So I was that person in my friend group. And I think also, and I just realized this recently, in my 40s, after we got married pretty young, 24, had kids by 26, and by like mid 40s, I was like, man, I need some time alone. Like I haven't been alone maybe ever, just for a little bit. And so luckily I have a very supportive, understanding partner, and I went away, spent some time in Europe. We had our place then, but just kind of traveled around for like 3-4 weeks on my own. And all of the issues that I think I was having at the time that I thought, oh, well, it's my partner or it's my friend group or my family or whatever it was. I realized spending some time alone and realizing that I was happy and okay alone, that I could be, that I am a person outside of mom, wife, friend, volunteer, entrepreneur, whatever. I think that not just women, but all of us need some time and space alone. And that maybe doesn't mean, and at that time, it wasn't like I was totally alone. I spent some time with a couple of friends and my sister, and then spent some other nights and weeks alone. But we are on this planet, and we live, and we're responsible for ourselves, and we are at the very end of the day alone, surrounded by friends and family if you're lucky, of course. But you need to be okay by yourself. You really do, and I think that makes you a healthier person. So I think it was that that time that I felt it just really helped I came back invigorated to put more energy into being a great mom and to be a more present wife, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized that I wanted to do that for other women, to empower them to not have to wait for a friend or a partner to go somewhere. But maybe they're not quite ready to completely go, traveling around Spain on their own. It's just not everybody's ready for that, right? So this is like a nice soft landing. You can go with a group of 6 to 10 women. It's interesting, 53% of women in the United States are single. And even if you have a partner, isn't it amazing? And then even if you have a partner, like I said, it's nice to spend some time apart. When you come back together, you missed each other, and it's really nice to have something to talk about and tell stories about, and you just get to feel again who you are. It gets to it just gives you some clarity. So I've always loved connecting women. And I think they say if you can take your values and make your living around those things that you already do well, that are important to you. And so connection and empowering women, as well as discovering and seeing the world, these are all the things that I'm most passionate about. So I just kind of put them all together and realized that it turns out other people are also really in need of this. So it's been a really wonderful journey and a big, a fantastic learning journey for me, as well as a wonderful, what's exciting about it is meeting all these amazing women from all over the world. I mean, that's really the cherry on the cake.
Yeah, I think that's the most underrated thing within travel, but also in normal life, is being comfortable on your own. So my trip in November, which is a month, is on my own. I'm doing it solo, right? Because I think sometimes you just need to have some time to yourself and to see if you can navigate the world by yourself sometimes, because you are together with people a lot of the time, right? So I wouldn't obviously reject my partner coming on the trip if she wanted to, but she can't because of the holiday on her job, right? So it just works out that I'm going on my own. I'm actually looking forward to it. I haven't traveled on my own for a while. I did it a bit last year. This is solo travel without a tour group. So this is like me literally on my own navigating the world. Yeah. So it's a different ball game to group tours, right? So I'm looking forward to it and seeing what comes up.
I think it's always going to be a good thing to do. And you might have some times when you're lonely, but that's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
And I 3 months one time in Paris on my own. And I think my partner did visit at least once, but I definitely felt lonely after a while. But it's the times that you remember are going out to dinner. I remember going out to dinner to a kind of fancy restaurant, and I came home and I said, I really had a really nice time with myself, and that is a great thing to do and to feel okay doing. And so many people do not feel okay doing that, and it just takes a little practice, like anything.
Yeah. Some people described it as like codependency issues, which could be true. It sounds a bit harsh, but maybe some people just need a dependent there, right, to do the trip or to do whatever, which I guess is more of a thing outside of travel, something you need to work on yourself. But travel could be a good vehicle to test that out, right? And maybe doesn't need to be like on the other side of the world. It could be just like going to a different state, to a city for a weekend or something, right?
Exactly. And I know we've talked about this before with women, but and some people are hesitant to sign up for a group trip when they don't know, they don't know everyone on the trip. Well, as a matter of fact, they don't know anyone. And most 90% of the ladies who sign up are not coming with a friend or family member. So, they're throwing themselves out there. And I know sometimes we talk to a lot of people before they come on, and the reticence is that feeling. And do you remember, I don't know if it's the same when you were growing up in Norwich, but going into the cafeteria and not knowing if you had, maybe you're new in school, and where should you sit in the cafeteria? Are you going to be, at the dorks table or whatever they used to call it? Nobody wanted to sit with you. So there's that trauma that I think, particularly, at least I know women, and I'm sure guys have this too, where, is it going to be like that, where I go on this trip and nobody likes me? It's really, we go back right to fourth grade on this. And I always said, look, Everybody feels that way. Even if you were the most popular kid in fourth grade, you've had some experience with that. Everyone has had that moment where they're, and
Sure.
we really train our trip facilitators to figure, and it's actually kind of complex group dynamics. I mean, there's all kinds of,
Hmm.
we just had a leadership training from facilitator for all of our tour guides, because this is really important when you've got a group of people that don't know each other. How can you create a bond in that group? And, it's a matter of making sure that, Susie and Linda don't always sit together. Maybe they hit it off night one, but we got to move them around the table so that everybody gets to know each other. And that's why I keep the groups small, so that, because even when you go to 12, and I've tried this over the years, now you start getting subsets. You get, 3 groups of 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
And what I really like is to be able to be at one table and have a conversation as a group. And of course, you're going to break off and have other conversations along the way. But we go out of our way to make sure that group dynamic is really supportive, and draw out the introverts, the ones that don't talk as much, because usually
Hmm.
they have as much of a story, if not a more interesting story, than those of us, me included, who maybe talk too much at the table. So it's something that is really important to me. And it's the reason why a lot of the ladies will come back and back on trips, because we're developing a community of women supporting each other. And that's really, at the end of the day, what this business is all about.
Yeah, you're so right about the dynamics of a group. For a tour leader, that is a heck of a job.
Yeah.
Because you've got to quickly switch on to, if you can, in the first impressions, but also first 2 days, whatever, to try and work out how to get the best out of the group. Is there two
Yeah.
people that don't like each other, or introvert versus extrovert? Like, there's so many different dynamics. It's crazy, right?
It is. And I liken it to be, you need to be that school teacher that you had that was fun, interesting, and, kept everybody sort of engaged, but someone that you don't screw around with either. So you would not step out of line. So there's a lot of nuance to the thing. But it's also really, really fun. It's a lot more fun than
Yeah.
doing dishes.
I mean, that's the ultimate game, isn't it? As long as it's fun. So how do you navigate expanding to different countries? Because you mentioned France is obviously a passion of yours, but when you're branching out to, obviously, England or Bali or Greece or Morocco, etc., were they places that you went to make sure that you understood that country and what potential tour could look like, so you could take it back to your company, as yourself, and like develop something? Is that key to your thinking for other tours around the world?
At first, I thought I had to scout every single place that we were going to go beforehand. And I did, particularly in France. Then I realized there's such a thing called a DMC. So that's called a destination management company. So when we go to Bhutan, for example, or Thailand, or Cambodia, yeah, oh my gosh, or any of these places that I am not and we are not experts on,
Sure.
we hire an in-country guide and company that we create the tour with. So I never take some sort of off-the-shelf tour, because we are really not about that. We're really about trying to go on the road less traveled, try to find we don't stay in big, huge, hotel chains ever. We, really are trying to find those local spots, those hidden spots, and we want to connect with other women to learn what life is like for a woman, say, in Bhutan or in Namibia. We just got back, a trip just got back from Namibia. But so, yeah, there are wonderful companies out there, but I really go out of my way to try and find women-owned companies that are smaller DMCs. So we work with them, and then we always send a trip facilitator. So somebody who really knows the way we work and knows this bonding process, if you will, as well as just keeping us on brand. And then we will have a guide who's an expert in Namibia, in Cambodia, in any of these places. So, luckily, the whole business is set up this way. So to help those of us who are, you just can't be an expert in
Yeah, of
65
course.
countries. It's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm glad you use someone who can get the local, I won't say talent, but people who can actually deliver what you're looking for, because that's key, right? And I think it
Yeah,
also helps the local economy, I suppose, as well.
absolutely. And that's why I prefer to work with smaller companies so that we're really affecting change. And every time that we can, every opportunity that we can, we like to, particularly in developing countries, we like to go in and, for example, there's a woman that started, actually raised in the U.S., but she's originally, her family is from Morocco. She went back to Marrakesh. She discovered that women who are divorced in traditional society there get shunned by their whole community. So here they are, really hadn't worked, don't know how to make a living. They're trying to raise kids on their own, and nobody wants to talk to them. So it's a tough situation. She started a really beautiful not-for-profit, which is basically a restaurant in Marrakesh, where she trains these ladies to be either chefs or servers or run, a restaurant. And I think they do 6 months to a year with her, and then they go out in the world and they get jobs, and
Oh,
hence
wow.
respectability and pay the rent and help the kids and all of that. So we try and meet with women who are doing interesting things like that. The first trip I took there, the ladies at the table were so moved by this lady who started this NGO that we decided to sponsor one of the ladies for the whole year. So each year we go back and do that. So this whole concept of empowering women it's really full circle. It's not just for mostly well-to-do people that are coming on our trips, but it's trying to affect everybody and as many women as we can when we're out there in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. I bumped into a women-only tour guide company in Langtang Valley last year in Nepal. I was just hiking up with my guide, and they're at the same sort of coffee stop, little tea house, should we say, and got chatting to the guide, and the two girls on the trip with her, one was British, so we're talking about it. I didn't realise that even in Nepal they have these women-only guide groups, because I guess there's some problem with safety occasionally, right, when hiking, as it's men predominantly who are guides. So
Yeah.
that was great to see, and I just loved hearing about it, and they're loving the trip, and just couldn't believe it. Didn't really switch on that was a thing. It kind of blew my mind a little bit.
I know, isn't it mind-blowing? I found a girl in Mongolia. I found a girl, and she's been doing it for a long time. I mean, I'm part of this organization called Women Travel Leaders. So there are people who are at the top of this their field that are, and they don't necessarily all have women's tour companies. They might be a top executive at Expedia or something, but it's a really great network for women in this business. And I think because women make 85% of all leisure travel decisions, it makes sense that we get more women travel leaders out there. But it seems to be really growing, and I love the group because it's really supportive.
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's definitely growing 100% as we go into 2025. I've got some sort of quick fire questions really about Girls Guide.
Sure.
Just more like admin questions, if you like. So what's involved on your tours? What type of stuff would you see and do?
Wow. So it's just so different depending on the location. But the big thing is I like to develop a frame, so to speak. So how do you see take Vienna, for example. How do you see Vienna in 2 days? We're going to do a Budapest, Prague, and Vienna trip by train that I'm leading. And so I like to have a lens by which you can see and develop an opinion about that place and see it from a point of view rather than just say, here's the 5 sites that everybody goes to and let's just check those off.
Sure.
So what we're doing in Vienna is actually in Prague and Budapest is focusing on the Secession and Art Deco period. So, amazing Art Deco and Art Nouveau architecture in Prague. The Secession movement, which is fascinating, and of course, super. And Klimt was part of that. It's so important to Vienna and so much of the beautiful architecture you see there. There's a Secession museum as well. So just taking some sort of lens towards a place, I think, especially when it comes to cities, really, really helpful. I did one of my first trips to Japan was I think it was called Wabi Sabi Japan. So it was taking the aesthetic of wabi sabi and the concept of wabi sabi, which is we could have a whole other podcast about. But if you don't know what it is, look it up. Super, super interesting and something that only the Japanese even have a word for. But we kind of geared everything around that. So the tea ceremony and ikebana, flower arranging and so forth. So I like to have a theme. I think, big fan of theme parties. I like a theme because it gives you sort of a guiding point rather than, I just didn't want to be like every other tour company that's just, let's see the highlights of Morocco. Let's see the highlights of whatever. It's not as interesting.
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, because you can do that yourself. I know you can. Obviously, you're offering a group. I get that, but like, if you want to go on Google or Lonely Planet and just pick the top 10 things, I mean, anyone can do that because they're going to be pretty much in the central location of the city, right? So it's not. I would consider it's not hard travel in terms of the admin because they're going to be right there. Right. My tour last year in Lebanon, which was super interesting, and obviously it's in the news right now because of what's going on. Yeah. But at the time, the guide who lives in Lebanon, Portuguese but speaks English, he was going into areas that I would probably consider that now wouldn't be advisable, but he was really going into local areas to meet the people, and you get a different perspective on that if you watch the news all the time, right? So that's what I found interesting. But if I was to go to Beirut and just see the top sites in the center, I could have done myself. So that's where tour groups offer that niche. And I think it's nice to have a purpose because you can aimlessly wander sometimes, I guess, on tours.
Yeah, and if you're just seeing sites, and look, I mean, there's some incredible sites in the world.
Of course.
I mean,
there's a time and place.
You got to see Luxor. I mean, you got to see certain things. You got to get on a boat on the Nile. There's so many things you have to do, but the intangibles, the hands-on. Yes. I love to have hands-on activities too, because I realize, when we're out there, we're seeing something, we're hearing some history, we're meeting people, which is really important. I mean, that's the authentic part of it. But when you do something hands-on, whether it's a perfume making workshop or a cooking class or, anything really that you're doing with your hands, maybe it's a flower arranging class, it takes your brain to a different place, right? So you're not just passively seeing something or listening, but it's almost like you're moving the culture into your hands and now into your body. And it's very different. And even if you're not a cook, you don't have to like cooking to enjoy a cooking class. It's something that I really try and put in each trip because everybody enjoys it. And I do think it's important when you're traveling to step off the sightseeing route, to meet people, to go to the market and to do something that's visceral in some way.
Yeah, totally agree. How many people do you have in your tour groups?
So never more than 10. 10 is the max. And that's because of the reasons I told you, the bonding. So 6 minimum. We also try to make our tours go, even if, let's say, and we just decided this the other day, one tour, there's not as many people, usually 6 is the minimum. For some reason, not as many people have signed up. As long as I'm not losing money, I will make that trip go because I don't want to disappoint people. And so, so it can be really even smaller than 6. So it's like sisterhood hardcore when you have these small groups. By the second night, everybody's laughing and they know each other's story and
all the secrets and stuff.
Fun. Yeah, they keep in touch afterwards, which is what I love about it. And they'll go visit each other. They have reunions. They go off and do trips on their own. I mean, that's the coolest part about it.
I think in the future, I think I could see myself doing this to a degree. Not right now, but that's a real carrot there where you get like those bonding experiences with people that you offer experiences to, right? And they love it, and it probably lasts forever, right? They're not going to forget that. So,
oh yeah, call me. I'll give you some pointers.
Yes, please. Yeah.
It's a service job. It really is a service job, and your job as the tour leader is to try and create magic for people. And that's fun. But also to be understanding when somebody is anxious, to listen to them. That's the most important part, is to listen. We're really not so good at listening anymore in our culture. And everybody just wants to be heard. And, if somebody is worried about something, and it's sometimes, I'll have, like I had a lady who had never traveled outside the country. And she went with us to Mexico, and she was very anxious about her flight home. People get very anxious around, just the flight things. And, you and I've traveled to all these countries, and sometimes you can get like, what do you mean? But you can't, you got to remember, put yourself in that person's shoes and say, well, she's never done this before,
Absolutely. I get occasionally anxious when flying, mainly because it might be a short period of time with a lot of flights. If I'm going in November, it's 2 flights in and out, 1 in, 1 out. That's okay. But if you're like traveling around the Himalayas, for example, and you've got to fly here and fly there and fly out of here, you do 4 or 5 flights in 2 or 3 weeks, it just gets a bit, I don't know, this weird thing comes across you that you think you're pushing your luck a little bit. I don't know what it is. It is a bit of anxiety, right? But it makes no sense.
Yeah, I know. It is it's really a safe way to travel though. So I've developed this sort of Zen, travel personality. Like whatever happens is going to happen. I can't do anything about it because that's what makes us anxious, the loss of control, right? So you just, hey, you're not in control. Whatever happens is going to happen. That's it.
Yeah. Do you need to speak English to join your tours?
Yes. Yeah. The trip facilitators are always English speaking. So we get most of our customers are from the US, probably 75%, a lot of Canadians as well, Australians, UK, and then, the expat who lives in Japan or somebody in the Netherlands who speaks great English. So we had a lady from Tel Aviv. They come from all over, but you do need to speak English.
Okay. And what is the range of cost involved per trip?
So we are not the cheapest on the block, and that's because we include almost everything. So we stay in 4 to 5 star hotels, lodges, or castles, or whatever. So they range from basically 5 to 10,000, and that's usually for 5 to 10 days. And we include almost all the meals. We include wine, and decent wine, good wine, not house wine, with dinner, 2 glasses, which is really rare. Almost nobody does that. And it's a very upscale, very curated experience. But I never like to use the word luxury because it's not about luxury. It's about have it be high, it's really about the small group. Now, a small group is always going to cost a lot more than a group of 10, 20, 40, right? I mean, obviously, if I have a huge bus of people, I can charge a lot less. But it is something really special. And, we have everybody from school teachers to doctors to pilots join the trips, retired people, widows, lots of widows, and young people as well. But it's recently I've learned about how I think it's important to think about travel as an investment in yourself. It's not just
totally agree.
luxury. It's not, it's something, it's really a fantastic way to learn, to connect with yourself, with the world, with other people. And we know now, according to studies, that you live longer if you take 2 vacations a year, as opposed to so many Americans in particular who take, none of their holidays. I mean, we really are
Crazy.
workaholics. It's killing us,
Yeah.
So it is an investment.
If you want to go and do maybe like, how can I put this? Someone described it the other day as if you're going on holiday or vacation, that is just going to like I guess an all-inclusive and just doing nothing, right? But these are more learning experiences. So that is more of an investment.
It is. And it's also, it's funny because a lot of women's only tours, they put you with a stranger in the same room and you have to sleep, beds next to each other, which I find, after like I'm 25 years old, I don't want to sleep with strangers. It's and of course they're not strangers for long, but that also will bring the price down. But ours are single rooms, so you have your own room, your own bathroom, and all of those things drive the price up. But this is the first time probably in history where women have a lot more capital than they used to. We've made some money. We've saved some money. A lot of our ladies come and they might be over 50 and they're ready to do something nice for themselves. So it's really a special experience, but we've got a lot of people that take 2 and 3 a year. So
yeah. I mean, that's totally true. Okay. Do you provide travel insurance?
We don't. We have a page on our site because I think it's a conflict of interest, actually. This is my own personal opinion, to sell and get a kickback from a travel insurance company because, it's a pretty complex thing. And, we have had enough experiences after 15 years that it's really important. I will insist I basically make everybody get travel insurance, which I didn't do before COVID. And now you have to have it in order to sign up for any trips. You have to have travel insurance, and you also have to have medical coverage that goes with you. We have a thing on our website, and it's just basically kind of like, it's called Square Mouth, and it's similar to Kayak or Expedia, but for trip insurance. So you just put in, what you're looking for, and that'll spit out a bunch of places. But the secret, I think, to trip insurance is getting a yearly plan. If you go at least 2 places a year, get a yearly plan. It's much, much cheaper and it's a much better value.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And I noticed on your website, you do offer some vacation rentals. I guess they're maybe the properties that you might own and you can rent those out as well in France, I guess.
Yes, we do. Those are places that are ours. So I'm not in the vacation rental business, but, we actually get tons of requests for those. It helps us offset I certainly wouldn't be able to have more than one house if we didn't rent them out. So it's a great way. And I always encourage people to think about that. If they want to buy a second home, make sure it's something you can rent out, because it helps, offset some of those costs. And so, our place in Bordeaux is basically free for us. So that's a real plus.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult these days with the prices of housing, though. I think it's for my generation, it's almost impossible to even buy a first one.
Yeah, exactly. You got to find. There's still some great values in Italy, in Puglia, for example. You could buy something in the 250 range. Spain. Actually, it's
Greece.
It's weird. Yeah, Greece for sure.
Greece shocks me with maybe some of the prices there, but I get that there's so many islands, right, to live in Greece that I can imagine that the not so popular ones are quite cheap to live in, but they're obviously not as maybe easily able to get to, right? You have to probably plan certain flights or boats or whatever. But some great value. Unbelievable.
Oh, I haven't been to an island in Greece that I didn't like so far. So I'm willing to try them
Oh,
all.
yeah. Oh, got to go, yeah. Carpathos Island last year was amazing in Greece, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
fabulous.
get me back. How do you people go about booking a tour? So I guess they would go to your website and they can start from
Yep.
there, or is there another
Yep.
way to do it?
So yeah, you have to go to girlsguidetotheworld.com. You will see, tons and tons and tons of trips there. You can sort by theme. You can sort by a season, country, whatever. What we do offer the ability, we always have somebody standing by to take an appointment to talk to you on the phone. We really love to do that one-on-one conversation and allow people to ask all their questions. Because especially if it's the first time you've ever done something like this, it's important to get those questions answered and to really feel confident and to make sure that this is the right trip for you. How much walking is involved? Is it,
Yeah.
how big is the tour group and what kind of places am I going to see? What are we going to do? We have some really wonderful people on our team that can talk to you about it. So we love to do that. And most people we do talk to before, but then you can actually just go ahead and book on your own without that conversation. And then we don't ever discount anything. We're really not about that. We think we offer a huge value as it is. However, if you've taken 2 trips with us after that, you always get sort of basically a loyalty customer reward of 5% off.
Oh, wow. That's great. Okay. How do you keep the responsible travel element as part of the tours? Because we're in this world now, especially post-COVID, where over-tourism is a bit of a hot topic at the minute, and rightly so.
It is.
So how do you make sure that your tours don't go into those sort of realms?
I think it's a really important topic and something that I think we do talk about in tourism, but maybe the larger public is not aware of. And I think it's important for those of us who are running tour companies to take a look at what we're doing. And so we have a whole page on what we call authentic, responsible travel. So authentic, we've kind of talked about, which is really getting to know a culture, eating their food, meeting the people, giving back in any way we can, and not just checking off sites. The responsible bit is not going to the over-touristed places. So I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there are 2 islands in Greece that I will not go to because that's where that's where they send all the Americans. It's gotten out of control.
It has, yeah.
It's too bad for those islands too. So, and the people that live there, I'm sure it's unaffordable for them. So let's say Dubrovnik. So Dubrovnik in Croatia is one of the wonders of the world. It's just absolutely incredible. But we go there end of September, October. It does kind of shut down at the end of October, but we try and go basically off season, not at the height of when all the rest of the people are there with their families and so we do that in the Loire Valley. We don't want to be there when all the huge tour buses are coming in. So we go in the early spring and the late fall. So that there's certain places that, you can't say we're not going to go to the Taj Mahal, right? But when can you go there? That is not the height of the season. So I just won't add to that over touristing because it's ruining places. I mean, you saw what happened in Barcelona this year.
Oh, sure.
So the other responsible thing is really trying to stay as green as possible. So, and this is, it might seem like a small thing, but it's a big thing to me. I don't want anybody to buy any more plastic bottles of water on our trips. So almost all the hotels that we are using now and hotels around the world are getting really responsible in that area. So they'll have particularly in countries like, let's say, Mexico or Thailand, where you don't want to drink the water, they'll have a big, huge glass jug, and you can refill your refillable water bottle with that water. And so I say to everyone, we have a pre-trip call that we do, which is about 2 months before, So we do it on Zoom, and this is a way that all the ladies can meet before they meet in person at the location. And everybody gets to introduce themselves, and we talk about sort of all of these things. But I say you've got to bring your refillable water bottle. And, if people forget, I'll say, go out and get one, because I just don't want to add any more plastic to the ocean because it's a giant problem, as you know.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that as well. I kind of realized last year that on this podcast and most of my trips that I podcast about, but also talked about previously, I'm a bit of an off-peak, off-season traveler. For example, I don't go away in the summer because what's the point in the Northern Hemisphere? So the thought of going to Greece, one of the two islands that you mentioned right now, no chance.
Yeah.
What's the fun in that? It's going to be chaos. It's going to be busy, hot. It's just going to be annoying, isn't it? I don't see the appeal there at all.
I mean, when you have little kids and they only have the time off in the summer, that's where the problem starts. So you've got to, if you're traveling as a family, you got to find some really out of the way places to go in the summer.
Yeah, that is a problem. Because also if you're a teacher, right? And I know the joke is normally teachers get 20 weeks off a year, whatever, because no one else gets that. I get it. That's a bit of a joke. But they only get the peak times off. So yes, they can probably travel more, which is great. But you've really got to find those spots that aren't that busy in the chaos on peak times. And that's quite difficult, I think.
It is.
Yeah,
it's a real thing. Yeah, I have to say, I was so thrilled when the kids were old enough and they went off to college that we didn't have to stick to those summers or those holidays. It is a lot easier now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think one other question is about the safety aspect. I assume you have no problems because you're working with local people, a lot of provisions in place, but I guess there's an element to it because obviously the women part of that is different. I don't understand because I'm a white English-speaking male, so I guess I don't really have many problems, which is very lucky. But I know women do have problems when travel sometimes. So how do you take care of that situation?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we never travel to some place that's not safe. And I do get those questions like right now, Egypt. We are going to Egypt this year. It is not part of the war. So I think it's not good for business to go someplace that's not safe, right? So I want my ladies to be safe no matter what. But there are certain countries that I don't recommend going as a solo woman. I made the mistake, and this is not because it's really unsafe at all, but I did go to Morocco by myself after I wrote the book that I wrote, which is called Paris Cocktails. I wanted to go to sort of like a place where I wasn't going to have any cocktails. And it wasn't so fun, only because it's really a cultural thing, but people really harass you in the souks. And not I was older. It's not like they were harassing me in any kind of, sexual way, but it was more about trying to sell you something. So it just got very tiring. So I felt like it was, I had to armor up. So when we go to Morocco, we always have, a guide, of course, that is Moroccan. And when you're in a group and you have a Moroccan guide, you just don't get harassed in that same way. So Morocco is an absolutely fantastic country. But it's one of those places that I wouldn't travel solo. There's tons and tons of places around the world that you can comfortably. But again, for people that are a little bit more reticent, about traveling completely alone, it is safer to be in a group. I mean, it just is but I will say that, you always have to be cautious though, even when you're in a group in a city, particularly in a city, because there's always, things can happen anywhere. So you need to, wear your cross shoulder bag and make sure you're watching your bag if you're on the metro or, and in a crowded place. That's when somebody could, grab your wallet or whatever. So there's always things that you have to just be aware of and not relax too much. Because what I do find, sometimes people have so much fun in these groups and they're talking and chatting as girls do. And then, it's like, no, don't walk in the street. Wait. There's traffic. So that's why you have a leader to make sure nobody walks in front of the bus, It's true. I can't tell you how many times I've had to do that.
Well, some of the countries that you've got on your list on your website, 100%. You need to be careful of the traffic. Gets a bit chaotic, right?
Mm. Yeah, the craziest I've ever experienced was in Hanoi. Oh my heavens, that is wild. They don't really. At the time we went there, they didn't have any. They had one stoplight, I think, and there's no crosswalk, so you just have to hurl yourself into traffic and hope for the best. Wild.
Best way to do it, I think. Just got to orderly go for it, not just like looking around and then just wandering to the street into the road. But I think once you're ready, you just got to go and then hope they avoid you.
Exactly.
Okay. And where can people find yourself, but also Girls Guides online? It could be social media and website, so they can maybe get in touch with you to book a trip or ask more questions.
Yeah, I would love anybody to get in touch and please tell me that you heard it on James's podcast. I just can't believe how many you've done. Starting in 2020, it's just wow. You're a workaholic. Yeah, you need to take a vacation, right?
That was last year.
Yeah. girlsguidetotheworld.com. On Instagram, we are GG2, the number 2, the world. And the same on Facebook, GG2, the world. But it's when you spell it out on for the website, it's Girls Guide to TO, the world. So if that's not confusing, just go to Girls Guide to the World, and they're all linked there at the bottom. The other fun thing that we do have is called the Girls Guide Traveling Sisterhood. Maybe you can put it in your show notes because that one is a little bit harder to find. Yeah. It's a private Facebook group, and it's really we don't do any selling there. It's just a place to sort of cheerlead other women on to get out there and travel. We don't have that much time on this planet, and there's a lot to see here, and there's a lot to learn when you're out there. So we just want to support any woman who wants to get out there, and that could be, as you said, going to the neighborhood, the neighboring town, or to Mongolia.
Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes so people can find all those. For you, it's great because most of my audience is US.
Fabulous. Love it.
Okay, we're going to finish the episode with just a bit of personal travels and some quick-fire travel questions. I actually want to ask you, outside of your tours that you offer and you lead, do you get to travel just in a personal context? No tour group involved, no business involved. You get to just travel for yourself. Like, do you get to do that much these days, or has that slowed down a little bit?
You bet. Because I want to stay married, and my husband can't come on these trips, right? So he is not allowed.
Yeah.
So
not allowed,
we have a lot of, we're lucky because we have a lot of fun places to go and things to do, outside of this. And I'm also lucky because he is now part of our company, which is really wonderful. But yeah, we're in about 5-6 days, we're going off to Turkey for a wedding. So my son's friend is marrying a wonderful gal who is originally from Turkey. So we're going to, of course, take that opportunity to travel around Turkey. Then last year we got to go to a wedding in India. Same thing. Everybody seems to do these destination weddings. And it was my third trip to India and probably my most favorite because, getting to go to an Indian wedding is just something extraordinary. Unreal. Oh, my God. We went to Hawaii by ourselves. We go all over the place as much as we possibly can. We went to Oaxaca on our own earlier this year before the wedding. So Todos Santos in Mexico is one of our favorite places. But he, like me, will go almost anywhere. And I know he's dying to go to Antarctica. Have you been?
No, that's a heck of a cost and time constraint, if you like, if you only got vacation time, if you're working. So it's on my list, but not realistically in the next few years, I don't think.
I know. It's so expensive, isn't it? That's one of the issues.
Yeah, rightly so.
Yeah, of course.
I don't qualm at that. Like most countries in the world, if you think about it, are doable. Like you've got a budget, you've got a couple of $1,000s, let's say your budget, whatever, that you can find somewhere to make that last. But Antarctica is like a set price. That is 10, 15, 20,000, whatever it is. And there's no getting away from that. So you do need to plan it.
I know. The Galapagos we went to last year with a bunch of friends, and we all rented one boat. which that is another place that can be costly, but you can do it cheaper if you go to and stay on the islands. But there is nothing quite like being on the boat and going. That is an incredible trip. I really, really recommend it. It's just, that's one of our favorites that we've done in the last decade or so.
That's high on my list, but I guess Ecuador is in a weird place right now. I'm not sure politically what's going on.
Yeah, right after literally the month after we were there, the other guy who was running for president was shot. So yeah, I don't think it's, maybe you might want to put that on hold for a couple of a year or two. That said, I do feel like a lot of times we overreact. Turkey suffered that terrible earthquake a couple of years ago, and nobody wanted to go to Turkey, even though most of the main sightseeing places that we all go to we're not anywhere near that earthquake. So, I think sometimes we have to look into the decisions we make about places that we don't want to go and just investigate a little bit further.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, I went to Turkey last year and it's fine. So no problems that I could see. But then it's hard to know as a tourist, right? You don't know what's going on underneath the surface a little bit. But from the outside, it looks fairly good. So I enjoyed my time. I think 8 or 9 days there. Love the food.
I know. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
It's just incredible. My last thing is actually, before we get to the travel questions, 2025, anything planned for that?
Oh, just a little bit. We've got so many trips. Oh, my Lord. So personally, this year I'm going trekking with gorillas, which I'm really excited about, in Rwanda. That's one of our trips.
Wow.
We basically, how I do it is I plan the whole year. So that's happening now. Basically, it's almost all planned. We've got about another 20 trips to put up. But then in between those times that I'm going to be away, then we slot in our personal travel. So, and I'm very lucky. It's a wonderful, wonderful job to have it. It's, but next year, we're doing a really cool trip to Finland. We're focusing on the women of Finland, because Finland has been voted the happiest place in the world for the last 7 years. So we feel like, hey, there's something we can learn from these ladies. So it's really all about the Finnish women and why they're the happiest in the world. So that's a really exciting. Finally putting together a trip to Cuba, which I couldn't be more excited about. Really very excited about the music, the food, the just learning about the country. And that's 90 miles, off our shores, that it's always been sort of taboo. That is really exciting. Going to Slovenia. My husband and son have been there. I have not.
Love Slovenia.
Really, really. Yeah, it's so beautiful, right? Wow, there's Zambia. I'm going back to Zambia, doing a trip there. I loved Zambia. I could, like Greece, I could go to a different country like the islands of Greece. I could go to a different country in Africa every year. Be perfectly happy with that. I could just go on and on. We'd probably have to tape a whole other podcast to go over all the trips for next year.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, we're going to finish with some quick-fire travel questions. This is a little feature at the end where I just ask a few questions, normally your favourites, and you get 3 choices normally, so there's a bit of leeway here. So I'm going to kick off with...
It's travel question time. It's travel question time.
It's a question people don't like, but your 3 favourite countries.
It's a hard one, right? I get this question all the time. So I am going to, the 2 I always say are France, because, spent obviously France, Japan, obsessed with Japan. And the third one is so difficult. Oh my gosh. That changes from moment to moment. But I'm going to say, what am I going to say? I think I'm going to have to say Italy.
Oh, okay.
Who doesn't love Italy? Everyone loves Italy.
Yeah, okay. What about 3 countries they've not travelled to, that if you can go there tomorrow, where you're going to go?
Oh my gosh. So I have like an actual very organized list. I even have a thing on my phone. So you know the app Visited, the ones you visited versus the ones you on your wish list. And I'm not one of these people that actually wants to go to every country in the world because I'd rather go to countries that I really loved again, rather than go
Mm.
to, a war zone, for example. But
Yeah.
I'm dying to go to Brazil. I am also, it's not a country, it's a continent. I'm dying to go to Antarctica.
Yep.
And I don't know exactly which stand it is, but I want to go to some of the stands. So Uzbekistan, perhaps, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, one of my DMCs does a bunch of trips to Kyrgyzstan. It just feels like we went to Georgia on a trip, and it's just there's so much to see and do over there that I haven't gotten to do yet. So, and of course, oh my gosh, there's so many more in Africa too.
Okay. And if you could live somewhere tomorrow for a year that isn't USA or France, because I think they'd be obvious choices, where you're going to live?
Japan.
I knew you might say that. Give me a second one. I thought you were going to say that.
Oh yeah, that was too easy, right? I
Yeah.
would live in the Netherlands in a heartbeat. That
Okay.
just seems like such an easy, gosh, that would be so easy and lovely. And they're always in the top, like 5 happiest places in the world too. And I have a really
True.
couple good friends there. So that would be easy.
Give me 3 favorite overall cuisines internationally.
Well, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but Japan is my number one favorite. Everyone
Yeah.
in the family is obsessed with Japanese food. Italy, because it's easy to eat Italian food for weeks on end, whereas
Yes.
French food, you can, it's rich. Although there's so many places that are, much more, um, I would say modern French, so it's not as rich anymore. But absolutely, French would be in the top 3 as well. But it is easier, I think, to eat Japanese and Italian on an everyday basis. And I'm going to cheat and say, weirdly, when we were in India for a couple of weeks, we did not get sick of Indian food either. So
Oh, no.
that's my test. Like, can you, after 7 days, do you still want like an 8th day of the same kind of food? Because we're spoiled for choice here, aren't we?
Do you know what? That's weird. I thought that yesterday. I don't know why I was thinking about it. I was probably thinking about these questions, right? And I was thinking, well, what is a test of your favorite cuisine? And I think that you just nailed it. The test is, can you stick out a cuisine for longer than a week or even 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And I think there's only 2 places that I can remember where I didn't get sick of it. And it was India and Thailand.
India and Thailand?
Yeah, I could eat that all day, every day. No questions.
Oh my God, Thai food and Vietnamese food, both amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love that. I love all Asian food. Asian food is just so great. But yeah, when we were traveling as a family, we'd always have the last night wherever we were would be Chinese, because wherever you were, you get sick of the food. And we found a Chinese place, in Kenya. Because you can always find a Chinese place anywhere you are. Like, you can always find an Irish pub, you can always find a Chinese restaurant. So that was our tradition.
I don't know if India cheats on this though, because I don't know if you realised or remember that in restaurants in India, they always offer like a chow mein. It's always on the menu, a bit of Chinese chow mein. And I was like, I did occasionally have that. But it's got an Indian tinge to it. But like, is that cheating? I don't know. But I do seem to recall that as an option.
And which is not really a Chinese dish at all. That's an American
True.
Chinese. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I was going to ask 3 favourite dishes, going a bit more granular now.
So I went, there is a soba noodle place in Kyoto that has been making soba noodles, cold buckwheat noodles, in the same place for 400 years. That is unbelievable. You get like a little bento box. There's a number of different things you can get, but that is one of the most memorable meals. I've been back there a number of times. I love that. And boy, you have soba noodles somewhere else, it just pales in comparison. I think that the croissant in France are worth getting on the plane for, for no other reason. If you just want to go for croissant, worthy of the plane ticket, because you just almost cannot find those anywhere else. And they just, especially the ones they call bien cuit, the ones that are really quite well cooked and they're crispy and your whole outfit is covered with, little bits of croissant.
Yeah. Dream.
That's the mark of a good croissant. Okay, yeah. So it's the cacio and pepe. So that would be your
Roman dish.
Yes, Roman dish. And there's a place that my daughter and I went to that the bowl itself is made of edible Parmesan cheese crisped up, and then inside you have your cacio and pepe with all your Parmesan and pepper. It's the simplest dish, but to be able to eat the bowl is just off the hook. And I mean, I could go there, fly there tonight.
I've never heard this before. This is crazy.
So good. I can't even tell you. I know. It's like
unreal.
Mind blow.
I can't get my head around that. I know, like, I'm a bit into my cooking, right? I do like, especially Italian dishes. I like to get to the simplified version of what it really is, because I think in the West we tend to like call it bolognese, but we're adding in like the wrong cheese or the wrong meat or whatever it is, right? If it's not the standard traditional recipe, it's not a bolognese, it's your own thing. Cacio pepe is a bit like that, right? It's a very simple dish. But people start adding stuff to it. I'm like, well, it's not cacio pepe then, is it? It's something else.
Right. Yeah. Don't be putting some vegetables in there. Yeah.
Yeah. But, a bit of broccoli. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you just basically you grate a whole bunch of Parmesan and then you put it in the oven on a piece of parchment paper and you get it soft, and then you would put it around the bottom of a bowl. And then, basically something that's going to go into the oven. And then we basically had a whole conversation about how to make this with my friends that are like crazy foodies like us. And then, of course, you got to make the killer cacio e pepe, which I cannot say that I know how to do. But put it in that Parmesan bowl, and then you've got paradise.
Oh, I don't want to butcher this. Isn't cacio e pepe obviously your pasta, the pasta water? Is it pecorino romano cheese, I think? And pepper. I think that's the 4 ingredients. I might be wrong with that. I don't want to butcher that, but I think that's as simple as that. Yeah, no cream.
That is the beauty of Italian food. It's so simple, but it's all about the ingredients, isn't it?
Yeah, obsessed with having the sauce. And I'm guilty of that sometimes as well, but you can't beat the originals. Okay, more questions. I've got, are you a sunrise or sunset person?
Sunset, 100%. Especially on the boat. There's nothing better than a sunset on the sailboat. Cocktail in hand, of course.
Wow. Do you think that's the most popular answer?
I think so, because most of us don't get up that early. Although I think it's really cool if you get up early enough. But I'm one of those odd people. I like to get up late and go to bed early. So I love to sleep. It's one of my favorite things to do. I get a lot done during the day, but then I love to sleep.
Okay, a favorite landmark, could be nature or man-made.
Well, I just went to Machu Picchu. And, it's one of those big bucket list items. And you always worry about those places. Are they going to, is it really going to be as amazing? And is it going to be totally crowded and blah, blah, blah? It was incredible. Absolutely. I mean, there's no pictures that do it justice.
No, totally agree. We done the hike, 4-day hike, and it makes it worth it in the end. It's a tough hike.
Yeah.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah. My ladies don't hike. We're non-hikers.
Yeah, if you're not a hiker, then just stay in Aguas Caliente, the town, and get a bus up. If you're a hiker, get ready for some steps.
Yeah, hardcore.
What about if you could sit anywhere in the world with a cup of coffee and watch the world go by for an afternoon, where are you going to sit?
Okay, so I'm not going to say Paris because that's too obvious. Boy, being on a canal in Amsterdam, or even better yet, Delft. Delft is a lesser-known town in the Netherlands, and that is a spectacularly darling, beautiful small city. Super friendly, was the royal city, and a lovely place to sit on a nice summer day. As the weather's not always lovely there, but a lovely town, a lovely place to just hang out and chill and have a coffee.
Okay. I've got 3 questions left. Out of all the countries you traveled to, which has been the best for the budget? Which area has gone the furthest for your dollar?
I think that Oaxaca, not all places in Mexico, but Oaxaca, Mexico was one of the best value places that we've ever been for the deliverables you get. So we rented a house when we were there, and we'd walk right across the street, and there was a lady, and you see this all over town. You're going to be thrilled when you go there. But she was making the homemade, tortillas every morning, and she makes, basically 5 in a minute. See, it's just unbelievable how quickly they make them. And then so my husband would go over there and get a fresh tortilla. She would put a little pork fat on there, and then some eggs, whatever you wanted. And then he'd bring it right back across the street, and it would cost $1.50. Best breakfast you've ever had.
Insane.
No,
Can't wait.
it's such great value for a really incredible destination. So I hope I haven't spread the word too much. So I know you get a lot of listeners.
Penultimate question is going to be a controversial one, but has there been a place you traveled to that you didn't like?
Boy, I feel really bad saying it, and I'll tell you why I feel bad about this. And I'm gonna give it a lot of caveats because,
Sure.
This is why I have a hard time. I'm worried about answering it because I saw somebody posted recently on Instagram, and it got like 10,000 reposts, and about how much they hated Egypt. And this is why, and it sucked, and it's horrible, and this,
I saw that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so it's possible to have a bad time anywhere. It's also possible to have a good time almost anywhere. Egypt is an amazing country, and how dare that person, malign a whole country and an incredible civilization, really the cradle of civilization, because she didn't have a good time. I think that's very, it's obnoxious. It really is obnoxious. So, so I'll tell you a story that has a happy ending. The first time I went to India, I went on my own. It was April. I didn't do my research. I really didn't. And so it's like I do all the research for these trips for work, but the cobbler's shoes, the cobbler has no shoes for his family. It's that kind of thing. So I'm just kind of on a whim. I thought, I'd really like to do Ayurvedic treatment in India because I had done it, in California, but wow, I can go for 2 weeks there. It'll be so much less expensive. This is my logic. So I just looked up a couple of, Ayurvedic resorts, one here, one there. So turns out this is, quite a while ago. Whenever Modi first got elected. So it's probably at least 10 years ago. I went in April. It was 110 degrees every day in Kerala and Goa. So horrible weather, just sweltering hot. And the first place was actually a really nice, and one of the original Ayurvedic resorts, but the treatment was not great. A very perfunctory lady who was not into what she was doing. And then the next place actually had good treatment, but did not, the whole place was kind of falling apart. So I basically, both times I checked out like 3 days in and went to like a 5-star hotel, and I had much better Ayurvedic treatments there. But I really couldn't wait to get on the plane and get the heck out of there. I know a lot of people have that reaction to India, but then a few years later, I realized, I can't just write off a whole country because I had one, a huge, really important country with fascinating history and culture, because I had a 2-week vacation that I didn't plan well. And, it's just not fair. So I went back, went to Rajasthan on a photo tour, actually someone else's tour, which I really enjoyed. And, it was a much better experience. So I encourage people, even if they, if you have the travel bug like you and I do, you don't write off a place after one bad trip.
No, absolutely key. I think for India, if people are listening right now are thinking about it, but if you want an easier start to India life, then Rajasthan is a state that you should base yourself, because Very tourist heavy in terms of the infrastructure. So not going to be totally alone. And it's kind of set up to welcome tourists. So it's a nice way to sell in. It's where I started on my 3-month trip. A nice little
cool
gateway into India. Yeah.
Totally.
And the last question is, if someone's listening right now and they're really nervous about traveling, this could be very apt for your company as well, but just need a few sentences of advice or wisdom to push them forward to go and travel, what would you say?
I love that question. I actually did a whole webinar on this topic, and it's about fear, right? So fear is what stops us from realizing our dreams and doing the things we want to do. And it's powerful. And anxiety is just one element of fear. And there's a lot of more visceral fears. But we did a whole. It's really appropriate, of course, during COVID. So we did it during COVID. I had a bunch of women travel experts on, as well as a therapist, and she walked us through all of these exercises to deal with fear and anxiety. When most of them. And, you can Google, there's tons of them, but most of them are really about getting out of your head and back into your body and breathing, right? And learning how to do the 4-part breath and so forth. But my favorite thing out of that whole experience was because we had like 300 people on the call, I had asked people to write their questions beforehand. And I don't know if you know the lady who started Women's Travel Fest. But she was on the call. I'm just totally blanking on her name right now. I'll think of it. But she's she's just a fire plug. She's amazing. But she was going to be answering this question. And one of the ladies said, "How will I know it's going to be okay?" Big question. And she said simply, "You don't know."
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But don't let that stop you, because this life is short. And I just buried my 55-year-old nephew, and when you go to these terrible family experiences, and everybody knows somebody who's died, we all remember, okay, this is a finite thing that we're in right now, and the world is large. If travel is a dream for you, just don't let fear stop you. You can still be afraid, but just do it anyway, because it's just about taking those steps and moving forward. And then you'll be so proud of yourself when you did it, because you'll realize, and the more we do things, the less scary they are. The first time I ever spoke in public, I was terrified, and you just get better, and you get better at just by throwing yourself out there, getting yourself into a little bit of an uncomfortable place, doing something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone. But that's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps us young and vibrant. And it just gets all your neurons fired in your brain. So it's just really go for it.
Yeah, love that. Totally agree. There's 2 major things that can happen, right? You go on your trip, you're really nervous, and you love it. And it's amazing. You love the country, you love the trip. The second thing is you go on your trip, you hate the trip because you just didn't have a good time, but you learn something about yourself. So at least there's something, right? It can't be anything else.
That's right. And it's usually not black and white. It's usually some of both, right? I always tell people when we have our pre-trip calls, people think when they're going to go on holiday, on vacation, on a trip, on an adventure, on a journey, it's like there's going to be this magical time. And oftentimes it is. But have you ever had a week in your life, whether here, there, or another place, where every single thing went right? Every person was on time. Every dinner was perfect. The weather was perfect at every moment, every single day for 7 days. No, doesn't happen. I mean, life is life, no matter where you are. So part of travel, it's a microcosm of real life, is to get used to rolling with the punches and looking at the glass half full and appreciating what you do have, what you can see, and the weather when it's sunny or when it's rainy, and just living what is and appreciating what is.
Yeah, and you can learn so much from that in both ways. So it's an amazing way to finish podcast. Doni, thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for entertaining me for nearly 2 hours. I appreciate it's quite late where you are, so I fully appreciate you making time and indulging in the conversation.
Oh my gosh, what fun. It's my favorite topic, and I really appreciate being able to talk to you. I love to hear all the things that you've done and what you're continuing to do. And you're going to have a great time on your trip. And say hello to Oaxaca for me. Make sure you shoot me an email. I'll give you some my favorite places to go.
I'm already drawing up the email, so it's coming your way. Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Have a nice evening.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for tuning in to the podcast episode today. If you've been inspired by today's chat and want to book some travel, if you head to the show notes, you'll see some affiliate links below which help support this podcast. You'll find Skyscanner to book your flight. You'll find booking.com to book that accommodation. Want to stay in a super cool hostel? You'll see Hostelworld down there too. You'll find Revolut to get your travel card sorted. Click the GigSky link to get your eSIM ready for your trip. And more importantly, you'll find Safety Wing Insurance to get that travel insurance for your trip. There are many more to check out, so when you click that link and book your product, a small commission goes towards me and the Winging It Travel podcast. Thank you in advance and enjoy your travels.